He was known as a self-made millionaire. People admired his success and often said he had the perfect life. He owned a large company, drove expensive cars, and lived in a beautiful house in a quiet, wealthy neighborhood. Magazines had once written about his journey from nothing to everything. But those stories never talked about the woman who stood beside him before the money came. She had been there from the start. When he worked late nights in a small rented room, she brought him food and reminded him to rest. When his first business failed, she told him not to give up. When everyone else doubted him, she believed. At that time, they had little, but they were close. They laughed easily. They planned a simple future together. Years later, when success finally arrived, things slowly changed. The small home became a big house. Simple meals turned into expensive dinners with strangers. Long talks turned into short messages. He was always busy, always tired, always thinking about money, deals, and power. She noticed a change before anyone else did. At first, she told herself it was temporary. She believed he was under pressure and needed time. She stayed patient, just like she always had. Even when she became pregnant, she tried to be understanding. She knew pregnancy was difficult, but she did not want to add to his stress. But as her belly grew, the distance between them grew even faster. He stopped attending doctor visits. He stopped asking how she felt. Some nights, he didn't come home at all. When he did, he looked at his phone more than at her face. The man who once held her hand through every fear now felt like a stranger living in the same house. She often sat alone in a large living room, surrounded by expensive furniture that felt cold and empty. The silence was heavy. She missed the days when they had nothing but each other. One evening, she tried to talk to him. She waited until he finished a call. She spoke softly, telling him she felt lonely and scared. She said the pregnancy was harder than she expected. She said she needed him. He sighed, not in concern, in annoyance. He told her she was overthinking. He said she should be grateful for the life she had. He reminded her of the money he provided, the house, the comfort. He said he was doing everything for the family. But she didn't feel like part of family anymore. The argument grew louder. Words became sharp. Old love turned into frustration. Finally, he said something that broke her heart completely. He told her she no longer fit into the life he was building. He said his world had changed, and she had not changed with it. She felt her chest tighten. Her hands trembled as she tried to understand what she was hearing. This was the man she trusted with her life, the father of her unborn child. She asked if he meant what he was saying. He did not answer right away. Then he said he wanted space. He said maybe they should separate for a while. He said it would be better for both of them. She realized then that he had already made his decision. There were no tears from him, no regret in his voice, only cold distance. That night, she packed a small bag. She did not take much, just some clothes, her medical papers, and a few personal things. She moved slowly, her body heavy from pregnancy and pain. He did not help her. He watched from the doorway as she struggled to lift the bag. He did not ask where she would go. He did not offer to drive her. He simply turned away and returned to his phone. She paused at the door, hoping he would stop her, hoping he would realize what he was losing. He didn't. She stepped outside alone. The night air was cold. The sky was dark, and rain had started to fall lightly. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself and took a deep breath. Her heart felt heavy, but she tried to stay strong. She reminded herself that she was not alone. She was carrying a child. That gave her strength. She walked down the driveway slowly. Each step felt painful. The house behind her was bright with lights, but it no longer felt like home. As she reached the street, the rain became heavier. She stopped under a streetlight and tried to call a friend. No answer. She tried another number. Still nothing. It was late, and most people were asleep. She felt scared for the first time. She had never imagined leaving that house like this. Not pregnant. Not at night. Not without a plan. She decided to walk to the nearest bus stop. It was only a few streets away. She moved carefully, watching her steps as rain soaked the road. Cars passed by, their lights flashing briefly in the dark. None of them stopped. Her thoughts raced. She wondered how everything had gone so wrong. She remembered the early days when he promised he would never forget where he came from, when he promised he would always choose her. Those promises felt far away now. She placed one hand on her belly and whispered softly, trying to calm herself. She told the baby everything would be okay, even though she wasn't sure she believed it. The rain made the road slippery. Her shoes were not meant for walking long distances. Her back ached. Her feet hurt, but she kept moving. At the intersection ahead, the traffic light turned green. She waited for cars to pass. Her vision blurred slightly from exhaustion and tears she refused to let fall. She stepped forward carefully. She did not hear the car coming. The sound came too late. Headlights flashed. Tires screeched. Then everything went dark. The sound of the crash did not stop the rain. It only mixed with it. People nearby froze for a moment, unsure what had just happened. Then someone screamed. Another voice shouted for help. A car stopped suddenly, and a man ran toward the road. The pregnant woman lay still on the wet ground, her body twisted in a way that made everyone's heart sink. Blood slowly mixed with rainwater on the street. Someone called emergency services. Another person took off their jacket and placed it under her head. She was breathing, but it was weak and uneven. Her eyes were half open, but she seemed lost, like she was trying to understand where she was. Sirens echoed in the distance. At the hospital, doctors moved quickly. Nurses rushed her into the emergency room while calling out medical details. Her clothes were cut away. Machines were connected. Doctors spoke fast, using serious voices. She was unconscious when they realized she was pregnant. Everything became more urgent. They worked to save her life first. Then they worked to save the baby. Outside the emergency room, a police officer tried to understand what happened. Witnesses explained about the speeding car, the wet road, the sudden loss of control. It was an accident, but knowing that did not make it easier. Several hours later, a phone vibrated on a table at an expensive restaurant. The millionaire was in the middle of a business dinner. The table was full of important people. They were talking about future deals and big profits. Laughter filled the room. He ignored the phone at first. Then it vibrated again. Annoyed, he glanced at the screen. The number was unfamiliar. He almost rejected the call. Almost. When he answered, the voice on the other end was calm but serious. The words came slowly, clearly. There had been an accident. His wife was in the hospital. She was pregnant. For a moment, he could not speak. The noise around him faded. His chest felt tight, and his mouth went dry. He stood up without explaining anything and walked away from the table. In the hallway, he asked where she was. The doctor told him the hospital name and said he should come immediately. The drive felt endless. Rain hit the windshield as he sped through traffic. His hands shook on the steering wheel. His mind replayed the argument from earlier that night. Her face, her voice, the way she looked at him before walking out the door. At the hospital, bright lights and the smell of disinfectant welcomed him. He gave his name at the desk, his voice low and tense. A nurse guided him to a waiting area. He sat down. Minutes passed, then more minutes. Finally, a doctor approached him. The doctor explained that his wife had suffered serious injuries. She had lost a lot of blood. The baby was under stress. They were doing everything they could. The words felt heavy. He asked if she would survive. The doctor did not give a clear answer. That night, time moved strangely. Sometimes it felt frozen. Other times it moved too fast. Nurses walked by. Machines beeped behind closed doors. He sat alone, staring at the floor. For the first time in years, he felt completely powerless. Money could not fix this. Status could not stop it. He thought about how easily he had let her walk away. How little he had cared in that moment. The memory made his stomach twist. After many hours, the doctor returned. The baby had to be delivered early. It was the only chance. He signed the papers with shaking hands. The surgery was long. Every minute felt like an hour. He paced the hallway, stopping only to press his hands against the wall and close his eyes. Finally, the doors opened. The doctor told him she was alive. The baby was alive too, but both were in critical condition. The baby was taken to intensive care immediately. Small, fragile, surrounded by tubes and wires. His wife remained unconscious. He was allowed to see her for a moment. She looked pale and still. Machines breathed for her. He stood by the bed, unsure of what to say. He whispered an apology, though he did not know if she could hear it. Outside the hospital, morning came quietly. News of the accident spread faster than he expected. Someone recognized him at the hospital. A photo was taken. A short message appeared online. People started asking questions. Why was his pregnant wife alone at night? Why was she on the street? A small detail changed everything. Someone mentioned she had left his house just hours before the accident. The story grew. By afternoon, blogs were writing about it. By evening, larger pages picked it up. The comments were harsh. People were angry. They questioned his character. They questioned his values. He stayed at the hospital, but his phone would not stop ringing. Business partners wanted explanations. Investors wanted reassurance. Public relations advisors told him to stay quiet. But the damage had already begun. In the days that followed, his wife slowly regained consciousness. She was confused and weak. The pain was constant. Nurses explained what had happened little by little. She asked about the baby. When they told her the baby was alive, tears filled her eyes. She did not ask about her husband. He stood outside her room many times, unable to enter. When he finally did, she turned her face away. Her silence hurt more than any words could have. The baby fought every day. Doctors watched closely. Some days were hopeful. Other days were frightening. Meanwhile, the millionaire's life outside the hospital began to crack. A major deal was paused. A company partner quietly stepped back. People who once praised him now spoke carefully. He realized something too late. The life he thought he controlled was slipping away, and the woman he had pushed aside was fighting the hardest battle of all. As night fell again, he sat alone in the hospital hallway, listening to the sound of distant machines, finally understanding that this was only the beginning. Days passed, but the hospital felt frozen in time. The same sounds repeated again and again, the same footsteps in the hallway, the same quiet tension in the air. For the woman in the bed, every hour felt heavy. Her body was weak, her head often cloudy, but her heart stayed focused on one thing, her baby. Each morning, a nurse helped her sit up slowly. Pain spread through her body with every small movement. She learned how to breathe through it. She learned how to stay calm, even when fear tried to take over. When they finally allowed her to see the baby, she cried. The baby was so small, much smaller than she had imagined. Tiny hands, tiny feet, tubes and wires everywhere, machines making soft sounds around the crib. She placed her finger gently against the glass. She whispered words of comfort. Even though she didn't know if the baby could hear her, she promised she would stay strong. She promised she would not give up. Doctors explained things carefully. They said the baby was fighting, but it would take time. There would be good days and bad days. Nothing was guaranteed. She listened quietly and nodded. She had already learned that life could change in one moment. The man who once shared her life stood nearby, watching from a distance. He did not know how to step closer. Every time he tried, guilt pulled him back. He remembered how easily he had turned away from her that night, how small she looked walking into the rain. Now she looked stronger than he had ever seen her. When she noticed him in the room, her expression did not change. There was no anger in her eyes, no warmth either, just calm distance. That distance scared him more than shouting ever could. Outside the hospital, the world did not wait. News continued to spread. People dug deeper into his past. Old interviews were shared again. Quotes about family and values were replayed and questioned. Some stories focused on the accident. Others focused on the timing. A few focused on his personal choices. The comments were harsh. Some were cruel. Others were disappointed. Many people said the same thing. Money does not make someone a good person. His company felt the pressure. Meetings became tense. Emails carried a different tone. A major investor requested a review of leadership decisions. Another quietly reduced involvement. At night, he stayed in a hotel near the hospital. The mansion felt empty and cold. For the first time, the silence followed him everywhere. He replayed memories he had ignored for years. The small apartment where they once lived. The night she stayed awake with him while he worked. The way she smiled when he talked about his dreams. He realized something painful. She had grown with him. He had grown away from her. Back in the hospital, her recovery was slow. Some days she felt stronger. Other days, the pain returned without warning. She learned to accept help from nurses. She learned to ask questions and make decisions on her own. She stopped waiting. She stopped hoping someone else would save her. That change was quiet but powerful. One afternoon, a social worker visited her room. They talked about support, about recovery, about life after the hospital. The woman listened carefully. She asked practical questions. She wanted to know what came next. She did not mention her husband. Later that day, he finally spoke to her directly. He said he was sorry. The words sounded small. He said he had been wrong. He said he hadn't understood what he was losing. He said he wanted to fix things. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she took a slow breath. She told him she needed peace, not promises. She told him the night he asked her to leave had changed something inside her. She said she was focusing on healing and on the baby. Nothing else. Her voice was calm, but firm. That was when he understood he could not undo what he had done. The days that followed were difficult for him in different ways. A legal team contacted him about possible issues related to the accident. Nothing criminal, but questions were asked. Responsibility was discussed. Public image mattered more than ever. He felt trapped by the very world he had built. Meanwhile, the woman found quiet strength. She learned how to hold her baby for the first time. The baby's weight was almost nothing, yet it felt like everything. Tears fell onto the soft blanket as she whispered again that she would be there. Doctors smiled cautiously. They said progress was slow, but real. That hope carried her. As weeks passed, the hospital became a strange kind of home. Nurses knew her routine. Other parents nodded at her in the hallway. She listened to their stories and shared her own when she felt ready. She was no longer alone. The man watched all of this from the side. He noticed how others respected her, how nurses spoke to her with warmth, how she faced each day with quiet courage. At the same time, his business world kept shaking. A long-planned deal was officially canceled. Another partner demanded changes. The press reported financial uncertainty. For the first time, his success felt fragile. One evening, he sat in the hospital parking lot long after visiting hours ended. Rain fell lightly, reminding him of that night. He realized karma did not arrive loudly. It arrived slowly, piece by piece. Inside the building, the woman slept lightly, her body tired but her heart steady. The baby rested nearby, still fighting, still breathing. Two lives moving forward, and one man standing still, finally facing the cost of his choices. Life inside the hospital slowly changed. The days no longer blended together as much as before. Small signs of progress began to appear, and everyone learned to celebrate them quietly. A steady heartbeat, better breathing, a few extra grams of weight gained. For the woman, these small changes meant everything. She followed every instruction the doctors gave her. She ate carefully, rested when told, and walked slowly through the hallway to rebuild her strength. Each step reminded her how close she had come to losing everything. Sometimes the pain returned suddenly, sharp and unexpected. When it did, she closed her eyes and waited for it to pass. She had learned patience. She had learned endurance. Most importantly, she had learned trust in herself. The baby remained in intensive care, but the doctor spoke with more hope now. They still warned her not to expect miracles overnight, yet their voices were no longer heavy with fear. They explained that recovery was a long road, but it was a road the baby was strong enough to walk. When she was finally allowed to hold the baby without wires between them, her hands shook. The baby fit perfectly against her chest, small and warm. She felt a connection deeper than anything she had known before. In that moment, she understood something clearly. No matter what happened next, she would be enough. Outside the hospital walls, the man's world continued to fall apart. The company he had built so proudly faced serious challenges. A review uncovered mistakes that had been ignored for years. Some decisions were not illegal, but they were careless. They showed a lack of responsibility. Trust began to fade. Employees whispered. Partners hesitated. Clients delayed contracts. For the first time, he was not the powerful figure everyone admired. He was a man trying to hold together a structure that was breaking from the inside. He spent long hours in meetings, explaining himself again and again. He promised changes. He promised transparency. But promises sounded empty now, even to him. At night, he returned to an apartment he had rented near the hospital. The space felt temporary, like his life. He slept poorly and woke often, haunted by memories he could not escape. He thought about how easily he had chosen comfort over care, how he had mistaken success for happiness. Back in the hospital, the woman received news she had quietly hoped for. The doctor said she could be discharged soon. The baby would still need time, but she would be allowed to stay nearby and visit every day. They helped her plan the next steps. Follow-up visits, support services, a routine built around healing. She listened carefully and asked thoughtful questions. She was no longer afraid of planning ahead. When the man heard the news, he felt relief mixed with fear. Relief that she was healing. Fear that she no longer needed him. He tried again to be present. He brought food. He offered help. He spoke gently, choosing his words carefully. She thanked him politely, but she did not lean on him. Her strength was quiet but clear. One afternoon, while walking slowly in a hospital garden, she stopped and looked around. The sky was bright. The air felt fresh. She realized she was seeing the world differently now. Everything felt sharper, more real. She thought about the life she once imagined, and then she let it go. At the same time, the pressure on the man increased. A major investor announced a full withdrawal. The news made headlines. Analysts began questioning the future of the company. The stock price dropped. Phones rang nonstop. Messages piled up. He felt surrounded, yet alone. For years, he had believed he could control outcomes. Now he understood how fragile that belief had been. One evening, he stood outside the hospital entrance and watched people come and go. Families held hands. Parents carried children. Life continued around him, untouched by his struggles. He realized something painful. He had lost his place in the life that mattered most. Inside, the woman packed a small bag. She moved carefully, but with confidence. Nurses hugged her goodbye. Some wished her luck. Others reminded her she could always return for support. She thanked them all. Before leaving, she visited the baby once more. She placed a gentle kiss on the baby's head and whispered that she would be back tomorrow. Her voice was steady. The man watched from a distance. He wanted to speak, but he did not know what to say. As she walked out of the hospital, sunlight touched her face. She paused for a moment, breathing deeply. It felt like the first step into a new life. Behind her, the man remained standing, realizing that karma had not taken everything from him at once. It was taking things slowly, teaching him a lesson he could not ignore, and the final chapter was still waiting. Life did not suddenly become easy. It became clearer. After leaving the hospital, the woman stayed in a small place close by. It was modest and quiet. The rooms were plain, but the air felt lighter than the mansion ever had. She set up a simple routine around visiting the baby, resting, and slowly rebuilding her strength. Every morning, she walked to the hospital with steady steps. Nurses greeted her by name. Doctors updated her honestly. She listened, asked questions, and made decisions with calm focus. The baby continued to grow stronger day by day. There were still hard moments. Some nights she cried quietly, holding her pillow and thinking about how close she had come to losing everything. But she no longer felt lost. Pain no longer controlled her. She was moving forward. Weeks later, the baby was finally strong enough to leave intensive care. The day felt unreal. She dressed carefully, hands shaking with emotion. When she held the baby without fear for the first time, her heart felt full in a way she could not explain. She smiled more often now. Outside her world, the man's life continued to shrink. The company announced restructuring. His role was reduced. Advisors suggested stepping back to calm public concern. Media interest faded. but not in his favor. The story had already left its mark. He moved out of the temporary apartment and into a smaller home. The mansion was sold quietly. What once felt like success now felt like weight. One afternoon, he visited the park near the hospital. He sat on a bench, watching families pass by. Children laughed. Parents talked softly. Life moved on without noticing his fall. Then he saw her. She was sitting on a bench not far away, holding the baby close. Sunlight touched her face. She looked peaceful. Tired, but peaceful. He stood slowly, unsure if he should approach. When he did, she noticed him immediately. She did not look surprised. He stopped a few steps away and waited. She nodded slightly, allowing him to speak. He told her the baby looked strong. She thanked him. Silence followed. He wanted to say more. Apologies waited on his lips. Regrets filled his chest. But words felt small compared to what had already happened. Finally, he asked how she was doing. She answered honestly. She said she was healing. She said she was focused on the baby. She said she was learning how to live differently. She did not ask about his life. That hurt him more than any rejection. He realized in that karma had not come as anger or revenge. It had come as distance, as understanding, as a quiet loss of importance. He told her he wished things had been different. She looked at him calmly and said that some things change so others can begin. There was no bitterness in her voice, only truth. He nodded, knowing there was nothing left to say. He walked away slowly, feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. Months passed. The woman built a new life around simple things. Feeding times, doctor visits, quiet walks. She found joy in routines she once overlooked. She returned to work slowly, choosing something flexible and meaningful. People around her respected her strength. They did not see her as someone abandoned. They saw her as someone who survived. The baby grew healthy and curious, eyes bright and full of life. Each small milestone felt like a victory. Sometimes she thought about the past, but it no longer hurt the same way. It felt like a closed chapter. As for the man, he learned to live without applause. He spent more time alone. He thought often. He recognized his mistakes without trying to explain them away. He understood that losing love had cost him more than losing money ever could. Years later, their paths crossed again briefly at a public place. There was a nod, a moment of respect. Nothing more. That was enough. Karma had done its work, not through destruction, but through clarity. The woman gained her life. The child gained a future. And the man gained a lesson he would never forget.